The voice of the voiceless.
97.3 ESPN, WENJ, WENJ HD, Millville, Atlantic City, a Town Square media station. This is Game Night with Josh Hennig on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app. Now, live from the Matt Black Kia Studios.
Oh, what a move!
Here's Josh Hennig.
Josh Hennig here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN FM, the 97.3 ESPN mobile app. We are live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. Just follow 97.3 ESPN to hang out on the show. We are live here in the Matt Black Kia Studios here on 97.3 ESPN. We got Sixers to talk about. Dave McMenamin covers the NBA for ESPN. He is the ESPN reporter assigned to the Sixers-Hawks series. He will be joining us coming up at 6:20 to get more into his perspective on the Sixers and the Hawks series. Plus, I want to ask him his perspective, Embiid and Simmons. They were both number 2 in the biggest awards of the year. Embiid number 2 in the MVP, Simmons number 2 in Defensive Player of the Year. But what does that mean? So I'm going to ask Dave McMenamin coming up at 6:20 tonight. Plus, of course, you guys can chime in as well. 609-403-0973 is the text board. If you are listening on 97.3 ESPN FM and the 97.3 ESPN mobile app powered by First Bank of Seattle City. If you're watching on the video stream at 97.3 ESPN, of course, you can chime in as well if you're watching on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter here on 97.3 ESPN. Of course, also, we got to get into this Phillies situation as well, because the Phillies have now had 2 walk-offs in a row. Last night was Luke Williams, and today it's Gene Segura. And I'm telling you all right now, this Phillies team is just ridiculous. I mean, they find ways to win, they find ways to lose, they find ways to do all kinds of things. But my goodness, at some point, can you try to win a normal game? I mean, it's fun to have walk-offs, but this team is being exposed left and right. It is so obvious that while the bullpen is better than it was last year, it's still a average bullpen, to say the least. Alvarado had 7 straight balls at one point. I couldn't believe it. It was ridiculous. To have 7 straight balls. Listen, when I attempted to pitch in high school, I beat that. I threw the ball. I had 11 straight balls called. 1 strike. The next ball I threw, the manager came out to the mound and took me out of the game. So, trust me, if Alvarado has the kind of accuracy that I did when I was pitching in high school, you're going to have a lot more nights like you saw today. But listen, it's fun that they've won some games here, but we all know the reality. This team needs help, and I just don't know if they're going to get the help this year. The Phillies in many ways remind me of, and I'm not trying to be ridiculous, but they remind me what the Flyers used to be at one point. Remember the Flyers? They would go out and sign some big names. They go out and make a couple of trades, bring a couple of big-time, big-name players, but they never won anything. And then the one year they finally got to the Stanley Cup final, it was Michael Leighton and the third time for Brian Boucher in goal. But years ago, it was you brought in John Van Beesbrook and you brought in all these random goaltenders hoping that, Gar Snow would work out, right? And, you traded for Keith Primeau and you brought in Danny Briere and you brought in all these names. But you didn't win anything with Jeremy Roenick, right? You didn't win anything with Jaromir Jagr on the roster. So this Phillies team is starting to feel, to me, a lot like those Flyer teams back in the day, where it was just like, hey, You got some pretty good rosters and some really nice names, some interesting talent. But you're looking around, you're like, are we actually going to win anything? And at the end of the day, in today's baseball, you could argue that pitching is more important than it's ever been. Because in today's sport, pitching in many ways is like goaltending in hockey. You need more than one good, really talented guy. And when the playoffs come around, you need to do more than just go 6 innings and give up 3 or 4 runs. And for me, I look at Zach Wheeler and I say, there's your ace. There's your stud. But I'm very conflicted on Aaron Nola. It's obvious that Zach Eflin is still a year away from being a year away from being a bona fide 3-starter. When I mean bona fide, I mean for a playoff team. Right now, Zach Eflin probably isn't going to be the starting pitcher on almost any playoff team at this point in time. I still have these doubts and these nightmares about Vince Velasquez imploding in 2 innings or less. So no matter how well he pitches, I'm still not going to trust him. And whether it's Spencer Howard, Chase Anderson, Matt Moore, or whoever is the 5th starter, you know that guy's a pitcher in the postseason anyway. So you need 4 starting pitchers, and you need at least 3 legit lockdown bullpen pitchers, and they don't really have any. So if this team is trying to win the division, they're trying to be legit competitive, you got to go out there and do more. And I think that, like Frank Close was telling Mike Gill earlier in the Sports Bash, I think Dombrowski realizes that there's only so much he can do with the current roster, and he has to let some of this play out. So get used to this team having these, good, bad, up, down, left, right, all over the place kind of games, because this is what you're dealing with. You're dealing with a team that has limitations when it comes to improving the roster. And like the Flyers were years ago, okay, cool. You got Premu, you got later Roenick, you brought in Yager for a minute. You signed John Van Beesbrook. You traded for Sean Burke. Remember that whole thing? You could have all these guys, but they don't win you anything. And it was a team with Michael Layton in goal that got you the Stanley Cup final. I think the Phillies and their fans just have to be patient with, for lack of a better term, the process. Nobody knew who Luke Williams was before he came up, right? Nobody knew who Nick Maton was before he came up. And Mickey Moniak looks like more and more of a bust every day, especially when you look at the rest of that draft class. I mean, holy cow, when Mike Gill is going down some of the names who were in Mickey Moniak's draft class the other day on the Sports Bash, I was feeling nauseous. I was like, this is really bad. How bad you blew this pick. Thanks, Matt Klentak. Thanks for just totally just destroying the chance to get a top tier prospect. And it's like when the Flyers drafted Nolan Patrick. We were told how great he was, and then Nolan Patrick can't get on the ice because of concussion issues. Now there's rumors that Nolan Patrick wants out of Philadelphia. That's why he changed his agent. So, oh man, yeah, hope for the best for the Phillies, but the Phillies are more like that Hall & Oates song, "Hello, darkness, my old friend. I've come to talk with you again." Sound of silence. Josh Hennig here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN. We are live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter here on 97.3 ESPN. And yes, Jeff Bonapookie, the Phillies won a walk-off. Gene Segura in extra innings. Off the outfield wall, 2 runs came in to score. One of them being Herrera. That's why I couldn't not talk about the Phillies. They're just ridiculous. And as Rodney says on YouTube over here at 97.3 ESPN, he says the Phillies with another walk-off home run. They're teasing me. Fun, but I don't think it's enough to get me watching consistently again. And I think that's a problem. I think that I wish I could remember who said this. I think it was Bob. Was it Bob Wankel? I'm gonna try to find it, but he mentioned this before. About here it is. Rodney, I think that this cut from Bob Wankel, he was on the Sports Bash a few days ago, and he said this about the Phillies, and I think this is dead on and what's going on with the Phillies. Take a listen.
People have been watching a team hover around 500, whether it be a couple games over, a couple games under now for the last 3 years or so, and I don't think people are very interested in the product. I mean, I think it's just that straightforward. I mean, you have the Sixers in the middle of a playoff run right now. They're a much more intriguing team. I think the people are kind of still waiting to see whether or not they want to invest their time and energy and money, most importantly, into this team. And right now, they really haven't given the fans a reason to believe or a reason to want to do that.
That's what Rodney just said. Rodney on YouTube, you and Bob Wankel, who covers the Phillies, are on the same page right there. Because that's part of the problem. As a fan of sports, you want to give people a reason to watch. I've always explained to people, people always talk to me about, different sports topics. And I always tell people, as a sports entity, your job is to attract the casual to intermediate viewers because the diehards will always be there. NBA ratings are up over 50% compared to last year at this time in the bubble. This many rounds, and it's up 10% overall than it was 2 years ago before the bubble. And part of that is because the NBA is giving the casual to intermediate fan a more interesting product, even though there is no LeBron, even though the Knicks have been knocked out, even though there are no Boston Celtics involved. The NBA is giving people something to watch. You still have the league MVP Jokic. You still have Kawhi out there with the Clippers. You still have Chris Paul and Devin Booker with the Suns. The Sixers got the superstar Embiid. The Hawks got the superstar Trae Young. You get the big three with the Nets, even though Harden's on the bench, but still you have that attraction element to it. Two-time MVP Giannis. You still have the stars that bring people in. So for the Phillies, you got to give them a reason to show up. And for a while there, it was Harper. It was Real Muto. And when they signed Zach Wheeler, there was a lot of juice around that. But the problem now is when you look at the Phillies in terms of their attendance, it tells you where the fan interest is. The diehards are there. But the everydayers are just the casual guys are not. And it's because the reality, whether people want to admit it or not, is the Phillies are turning into the Flyers of the mid-2000s. Josh Hennig here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN, at Josh Hennig on Twitter. Here's your attendance numbers. This homestand so far. And remember, they're back to full capacity now. Okay? You can pack 30, 40,000 people in the building now. Instead, 15,000, 16,000, 15, 13, 13, 14. That's your attendance during this home stand against divisional rivals, the Nats and the Braves. Now, I assume the numbers would go a little higher over the weekend with the Yankees, but after that, you have no more home games until June 22nd. That's 12 days from now. You have a short 2-game stint with the Nats, and you go back on the road all over again. And then you're not even home again until the 29th against the Marlins. You got Fernando Tatis and the Padres coming in the first week of July. So, hey, man, the Phillies, they are an enigma. They're a mess right now. All right, we got to get to the Sixers coming up next. Dave McMenamin covers the NBA. He's been a guy who's covered the entire NBA. He's covered LeBron very closely. Him and Brian Windhorst wrote that book about LeBron, Return of the King, when he returned back to the Cavs. He covered the Lakers' entire championship run last year, and now this year he is the man assigned to the Sixers and the Hawks series. You will get his insights on the Sixers and Hawks, his insights on Joel Embiid, Ben Simmons, and more right here on Game Night with Josh Hennig on 97.3 ESPN. As we are live in the Matt Black Kia studios. Matt Black Kia, they will get you approved today. Matt Black Kia on the Black Horse Pike in Egg Harbor Township. Visit them online at mattblackkia.com. We'll get more of your thoughts and comments throughout the show. Text board is open, 609-403-0973. For all of you listening on 97.3 ESPN FM and the 97.3 ESPN mobile app. And we are live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter, where you can join the conversation as well. Just follow 97.3 ESPN to watch the show.
It's Sixers playoff basketball tomorrow night on 97.3 ESPN with the voice of the 76ers, Tom McInnes, calling all the exciting Sixers playoff action.
Free ball from the hash marks up and good. Oh, yeah. Jake Phillips with a triple.
It's Sixers Hawks Game 3 tomorrow night. Coverage begins at 7:30. Philadelphia 76ers playoff basketball on your radio home of the Sixers in South Jersey. 97.3 ESPN.
You asked for it. You got it. Fast Track Checkout at either Matt Black Kia location. Buy it your way. Complete your purchase online or have us deliver it during the Trade Up to a Kia sales event at Matt Black Kia in Egg Harbor Township or Tom's River. 0 money down and 0% financing for up to 60 months on every 2021 Kia Soul, Sportage, or Forte. Plus, we need your trade, even if you owe thousands more than it's worth. Get out of that old car you hate with 0 down payment and 0% APR financing available for up to 60 months. Try Fast Track Checkout. Purchase completely online and have us deliver right to your home or office. Only at Matt Black Kia, where you can't make a mistake with our 4-day love it or leave it return policy.
It's gotta be a Matt Black Kia.
Offers with approved Tier 1 or 2 credit through Kia Motors Finance. Not all will qualify. 0% based on 1667 for 1,000 borrowed. Negative equity financed into new loan. Go to mattblackkianj.com for complete details. Expires 7/6/2021. Matt Black Kia, 6211 Black Horse Pike, Egg Harbor Township. And now on Route 37 in Tom's River.
Are wasps, ants, or carpenter bees bugging you? Viking Pest Control can protect your home or business this summer. For a limited time, new customers save $50 on any service. Get a fast, free quote at VikingPest.com.
You're listening to Game Night with Josh Hennig on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app.
Josh Hennig here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN. The Sixers take on the Hawks Game 3 tomorrow night. Hear all the action right here on 97.3 ESPN. Of course, coverage begins all day long on 97.3 ESPN. And joining us right now, who's also covering the series for ESPN on the Boardwalk Kind of Hotline, NBA reporter Dave McMenamin is back on the show. Dave, how you doing today?
I'm doing well, Josh. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. And, for a series that I don't know if everybody was really fully sure what to expect of it, it's obviously given us a lot of fireworks. People didn't expect Embiid to play Game 1. He was a monster in Game 2. And it's amazing the contrast between Game 1 and Game 2. It was like two completely different teams, it seemed like, out there.
Yeah, I mean, Embiid really was a monster in Game 1, too. And you hear a slight tear of his meniscus in his right knee, and you see that he misses Game 5 against Washington with Game 1 against Atlanta only 6 days after the injury. And you're like, how's he going to play? Puts up 39 and 9 in Game 1, 40 and 13 in Game 2. And it wasn't just his presence that allowed the Sixers to even things up in Game 2. Really, the way they started was night and day. In Game 1, it was the Sixers trying to play from behind, and they had that wonderful run to cut a 26-point lead down to 2 with 10 and a half seconds to go in the fourth. In Game 2, it was them taking it to the Hawks from the start. Tobias Harris had a wonderful defensive presence on Trae Young, as well as an offensive scoring touch. And, they kept feeding the big man as the game went on. Now Atlanta made things interesting. They had a 32-0 lead in bench points in the first half, led by Danilo Gallinari and Kevin Huerter. But Doc Rivers pushed the right buttons, threw Shake Milton in there, who had really not done much of anything in the playoffs up to that point. Shake Milton outscores Trae Young 14-10 in the second half. And, here we go. 1-1 headed down to Atlanta.
We know that the Philadelphia 76ers are famous or infamous, depending on who you ask, for their home court advantage, their fans and everything. How do you think that impacted Games 1 and 2? It almost seemed like, to me, the Sixers in Game 1, it was almost like a fighter with an adrenaline dump, right? It was like they got so hyped at the beginning, and then they just weren't there for about 15 minutes, whereas in Game 2, they seemed to ride the wave a lot better.
Yeah, I mean, you have Triple H out there with Embiid before the game, ringing the bell, and they fell flat after that moment. Like, that seemed to be the biggest surge of energy pregame. Game 2, obviously a sustained wave of defensive energy, really. And after Game 1, Matisse Thybulle said that, I think we let our guard down because we did win the first round relatively easily, and we did do it without Embiid. So winning Game 5, so it was like, okay, we get our big man back, we get our MVP candidate back. Like, we're going to win this game. And they didn't play with the requisite care and urgency in the first half. Obviously, they did in the second half, and they carried over, that approach to Game 2.
Dave McMenamin from ESPN joining us here on the Boardwalk Kind of Hotline here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN at Mick10 on Twitter. Check out his article on Game 2 over at ESPN.com. Dave, you mentioned about the change in the approach as well. And I find it interesting that, a lot of people in our area, they were losing their mind. Why did you play this kind of defense in Game 1? And then they completely changed it in Game 2. And it seems like, people overlook the fact that an NBA series is almost a game-to-game proposition. These coaches, they changed the game plan from Game 1 to Game 2. What is your impression of the Sixers coaches, Doc Rivers, and his all-star staff he's got?
Yeah, I mean, Nate McMillan and Doc both know what they're doing. This isn't their first rodeo. They've been around forever. And you have to be able to make in-game adjustments, of course, but you have to be able to make adjustments as the series goes on. I give Rivers a lot of credit for not making a panic move, not changing the starting lineup in game 2. Obviously, you took Danny Green off Trae Young. It didn't work for you in game 1. And in game 2, you saw, as I mentioned, you saw some Tobias Harris on Trae Young. You saw a lot of Ben Simmons. You saw some Matisse Thybulle on him. And Doc says just he wants to mix up his pitches, basically. Like, Trae is that good of a player. And, Danny Green hasn't shot the ball all that well in the series. I think he's 1 for 7 from 3, but he had 8 assists in game 2. And he's someone with the veteran presence where he's going to make the right play. He's going to help your team. And sure, like some people were calling for Danny Green to be benched after game 1 because of his defensive performance or lack thereof on Trae Young. There's a recognition from the Sixers coaching staff that Trae Young's just really, really good. He's going to do things like that, but we don't want to lose confidence in the group that got us here. And, sprinkle in a little adjustment like playing Shake Milton, the 15 minutes that he played. And I think it's been a solid coaching job so far. But obviously both sides are using their pieces to the best of their ability. The stuff that they've done with Trae Young to be able to get him downhill, and then you keep Clint Capella at the dunker spot and he gets that lob, especially when you know that you're going up against a center with a injured knee in Joel Embiid. That's been smart basketball on the Hawks side as well.
Dave, I also wanted to ask you about, you mentioned Danny Green. You were covering the Lakers very closely last year during that championship run. Obviously, Danny Green, Dwight Howard being on that Lakers championship team last year. In your mind, how valuable has it been to have veterans like Green and Howard on the Sixers? I think a lot of people, maybe they don't always value that because some people only look at a box score. They don't realize how veterans like that can help the culture of a team.
Certainly, Danny's been a high-level role player pretty much his entire career. He started off with the Cavs, was highly touted out of UNC. It took him a little bit to figure it out, but ever since he's been in the Greg Popovich system, wins a championship with the Spurs, wins a championship with the Toronto Raptors, wins a championship with the Lakers. He understands what he needs to do to enhance the team's success level. And Dwight Howard was very refreshing to cover last year. I covered him back in the day, that ill-fated season he played with the Lakers first time around. And that's when he was Dwight Howard, Superman. I'm one of the faces of the league. He's been humbled a bit by his experience in the NBA. And certainly the guy that played for the Lakers last year was all about bringing positive energy. What can he do to lift up his teammates? The Lakers had a logjam at center last year, and he was a guy that, okay, if I'm not playing, then I'm going to cheer on JaVale McGee. I'm going to cheer on Anthony Davis playing center minutes. This year, you can see it. His energy is infectious, and he was a big part of that extended run. Once the Hawks went up 80-79 late in the third quarter, it was Milton, as I mentioned before, but Howard was a big part of changing the energy and the complexion of the game as they rode out that win.
Dave McMenamin joining us here, ESPN NBA reporter here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN at Mc10 on Twitter. As we get ready for Game 3, what do you expect to be the biggest challenge for the Sixers that's not named Trae Young? Because I feel like for the Hawks, we've seen multiple guys find ways to get points in the first 2 games. And I'm starting to wonder, maybe are there people who maybe underestimated the depth and the talent that is on Atlanta?
I mean, it's pretty remarkable. Atlanta's record dating back to March 1st is tied with the Brooklyn Nets for the most wins in the Eastern Conference. So even though this is a 1-5 matchup between the Sixers and the Hawks, this is a really good Atlanta team. To me, it's a 3-point shooting of their entire squad, because if you seemingly put all your defensive effort and focus on Trae Young, who only went 6 for 16, I think with 4 turnovers in game 4, you'd say it's a good job, but he still had 11 assists. And they still have Kevin Huerter making shots, and they have Bogdanovich, and they have Danilo Gallinari. They come at you in waves from all angles. And so you got to be really sharp on your rotations. You have to be physical, getting over screens, trying to get into Trae Young's body while also being mindful that you don't want to get in foul trouble because that's going to change up your rotation. And so it's a huge challenge. This is a really good Hawks team. I think they snuck up on everybody this year, particularly because they had injuries early on in the year, and Lloyd Pierce was fired, and it was like, okay, like came into the year thinking this would be an up-and-coming team, but everybody kind of forgot about them, and they just kept going about their business. And they have Trae Young is legitimate on the path to becoming one of the faces of the league for the next 10 years. The Sixers have their hands full here, but if they play with the defensive effort that they did in game 2, they should be able to find a way to get out of this series.
I'm glad you brought up the defense, Dave, because I've been saying this for weeks now. This Sixers team was built to play defense. Doc Rivers, when he was first introduced, says, I want to have the number 1 defense in the league. And I don't think people fully appreciate the fact that this team is capable of playing defense at a high level. And very rarely do teams who go deep in the postseason don't play good defense. The majority of teams that have championship caliber runs, they all have to be able to play defense in the postseason. I think that this Sixers team is equipped to play defense at a high level.
Yeah, the Defensive Player of the Year votes came out yesterday. You have Rudy Gobert winning it, but Ben Simmons is finished in second. And then you also have Matisse Thybulle and Joel Embiid in the top 11 for the award. That's a formidable group that they have there. And again, it comes down to being able to play within what the refs will allow you to do. And that's why Doc Rivers kind of worked the officiating in between games 1 and 2, wanted to plant it in the league's head that, listen, just because Ben Simmons is a lot bigger than Trae Young at 6'11", 240 pounds, it doesn't mean he's actually fouling him by using his body. There is, you're not allowed to hand check in today's NBA, but you are allowed to play with some physicality. And he wants to be able to set those parameters, Doc Rivers does, to be using this group that he has in that fashion because, yes, Ben Simmons has some limitations offensively. Everybody knows that. But Ben Simmons in the open court offensively is one of the toughest guards in the league because of his ability to see the court and pass out of different angles and use his size to finish at the rim. And so not only defensively a big part of what they do, but their defense they can turn into offense, and that's when they're at their best.
Dave, you mentioned where those two stood in the voting. Obviously, Joel Embiid second in the MVP, Ben Simmons second in the Defensive Player of the Year. What does it say to you that the Sixers have two players who are both not even 30 years old yet, and they are both that highly regarded in the league already?
It says that kudos to the Sixers organization for, even though they've made some major shakeups over the last 5 years, changing over the front office a couple times, changing over the coaching staff, to recognize that let's give these guys patience and see if they can figure it out together. The last team that had the guy who finished second in MVP and second in Defensive Player of the Year was the Los Angeles Lakers, who won the championship last year. And that's a special type of combination to have. And I think both, you could say there are question marks. They're not like the perfect candidate. You have the injury question marks with Joel Embiid. You have the offensive limitation question marks with Ben Simmons. But if you focus on the negative, you're missing the boat. There's so much positive with what these two guys bring together.
That being said, do you believe if this team does get past the Hawks, like I at least believe they can in 7 games, do you think they are capable of beating this superpower Nets team?
I wouldn't pick them to beat them. I think they're capable of beating them. Certainly, they could have gotten the door open a little bit after we saw it happen in Game 1 between Nets and Milwaukee, and James Harden goes out. There's not much expectation of James Harden returning in the second round, and let's say he does return in the conference finals. That means he's coming off a degree of rust or degree of not having his rhythm, having to be sitting out to rest and rehab that hamstring. And so that opens up the door a little. But even without James Harden, Kevin Durant looks like the best player in basketball. And a lot of what the Sixers have going for them in just about every series they're going to play is that Joel Embiid's the best player. But Joel Embiid is dealing with the knee, and even at full health, he may not be a better player than Kevin Durant or James Harden. And so that's a tough one. They're awesome at home, and that'll help them, and they have home court advantage in that series, and maybe they can squeak by. But this is a very special Brooklyn team, and that would be, even though Sixers are seeded higher than them, it would be an upset in my eyes for the Philly to beat Brooklyn.
Is it fair to say that, do you feel that the team that wins the Eastern Conference should be the favorite to win the NBA championship then?
Absolutely. I think the winner of the Nets-Bucks series should go on to be the NBA champion. And right now it looks like that's going to be the Nets.
Dave McMenamin joining us, NBA reporter from ESPN, joining us here at Mick10 on Twitter here on 97.3 ESPN. Dave, one more before I let you go. What does it say to you? I wanted to ask you because you cover the Lakers a lot. You've seen the Western Conference in great detail over the last few years. What does it say to you that all four teams that are left in the Western Conference, all four of those franchises, they've never won an NBA championship? There's no titles on those franchise resumes, but yet those are the four franchises that are left.
Yeah, it's very interesting. And even if the teams in the Eastern Conference win it, right, you have a Bucks team that hasn't won since Kareem and Oscar. You have a Sixers team that hasn't won since Dr. J and Moses. You have a Nets team that's never won. You have a Hawks team that was a long, long time ago. And so you have a shakeup here. And even though, yes, the super team, the super franchises of the Boston Celtics and the Los Angeles Lakers are out of it, there's excitement in hand here. And I think the Western Conference series are going to be just as fun to watch as the ones we have in the East. I understand Phoenix is up 2-0, but Denver's not going to lay down. They have their MVP and they're going back home. And the Clippers lost game one, and Utah's a very good team, but the Clippers lost the first two games last round and came back to win. And we could see Kawhi Leonard recapture the magic that broke the hearts of Sixers fans a couple years ago when he made on that finals run with the Raptors. And so I think it's a wide open NBA. Some people say we want the super teams. And of course, the NBA 5-6 years ago, seeing the Cavs and the Warriors battle it out every year, it was really fun for me to cover personally. But I think that's going to be just as compelling for everybody to tune in.
Absolutely. It's going to be a lot of fun. And of course, Dave will be covering all of it. He's covering the Sixers-Hawks series right now. He covers the NBA for ESPN. You can catch him all over SportsCenter and all the ESPN shows. Follow him on Twitter at Mick10 on Twitter. And his old guest, he appeared on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline. Dave, great stuff today.
You got it. Thanks, Josh.
Always appreciate talking with Dave McMahon. We got a chance to talk to him a little bit last year during the bubble, the year before for the Sixers and their playoff runs. Always good to tap into Dave's coverage of the NBA here on 97.3 ESPN. All right, we're going to check back on some of the things that Dave says. Some very interesting things there coming up next right here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN. Also, check out what you guys have to say. Text board open 609-403-0973 to get on the conversation. Let's go on 97.3 ESPN FM and the 97.3 ESPN mobile app powered by First Bank of Seattle City. If you're watching the show on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter, we'll get to your comments as well coming up next right here on Game Night with yours truly, Josh Hennig, live in the Matt Black Kia Studios here on 97.3 ESPN. Don't forget 97.3 ESPN.com and 97.3 ESPN mobile app for all your Eagles, Phillies, Sixers, Flyers, and high school sports coverage. All there for you at the click of a button or right there on the app on your phone.
The NBA playoffs continue.
6 to shoot, 7 to go. Durant top of the arc for 3. Ripped it!
Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving, and the Nets win games 1 and 2 at home in Brooklyn. Now the series shifts to Milwaukee, where Giannis and the Bucks face a critical Game 3.
They just have to play a lot better on the defensive end. It'll get some transition baskets. It'll get them some better looks at 3.
Coverage begins tonight at 7 Eastern on ESPN Radio.
The NBA playoffs, exclusively on 97.3 ESPN FM.
Oh yeah, it's on at Matt Black Nissan.
The summertime sale is on at Matt Black Nissan, and the deals are heating up. Put 0 down, pay 0% interest for 60 months, or get $2,500 off MSRP on every 2021 Nissan Murano in stock. Plus, we need your trade. Buried in a current loan or lease, Matt Black Nissan wants to get you released so you can drive the all-new loaded SV model 2021 Nissan Rogue. Lease just $299 per month with 0 security deposit, plus our fast-track checkout. Bring any vehicle to Matt Black Nissan and get top dollar today in Egg Harbor Township, next to Home Depot, or online at mattblacknissan.com.
It's on at Matt Black Nissan.
Negative equity will be refinanced into new vehicle. Rate qualifications exist. Not all will qualify. 0% APR financing based on 1667 per thousand borrowed. Offers can be combined. 36 months, 10,000 miles per year lease. Lease selling price $28,590. Call 877-289-6670 or go to mattblacknissan.com for complete details. Offer ends 7/5/21. It's on at Matt Black Nissan on the Black Horse Pike, Egg Harbor Township.
Hello, this is Commissioner Len Desiderio. The Cape May County Commissioners want to say thank you to the people of Cape May County. You have done the hard work to slow the spread of COVID, but it's not over yet. If you want to be protected, please get vaccinated. Tens of thousands of Cape May County residents have already gotten the vaccine. Together, we are creating a safe and prosperous future for our businesses and families. Anyone 18 or over can go to the county vaccine clinic. Many of our pharmacies and grocery stores are vaccinating people 16 and over. Go to CapeMayCountyNJ.gov to find out how easy it is to get vaccinated. You can walk right in, no appointment necessary. Now is the time for everyone in Cape May County to finish strong, safely together.
Now, more Game Night with Josh Hennig on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app.
Josh Hennig here on 97.3 ESPN. Of course, we have NBA playoff action tonight. The Nets versus the Bucks. Coverage begins at 7 o'clock right here on 97.3 ESPN. Sixers versus Hawks coming up at 7 o'clock coverage tomorrow night as well. So we got Eastern Conference both nights tonight. We got your Bucks. We got your Nets. Tomorrow we got your Sixers. We got your Hawks your home for Sixers basketball, the NBA playoffs, Eagles football, Flyers hockey, Thursday, Monday night, Sunday night football, and more right here, 97.3 ESPN FM. We are live on 97.3 ESPN.com, the 97.3 ESPN mobile app, and we are live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. You can comment on the stream as well to get in on the conversation. Great stuff from Dave McMenamin. Before I get to some of your guys' comments, I see the comments from Rodney and Jeff on the YouTube stream. Before we get to your guys' comments, I want to start with this. I thought what Dave said about Embiid and Simmons is a really big deal, because I think that people overlook because, Ben doesn't shoot and all that kind of stuff, that they undervalue what they bring to the table. Now, this isn't a Sixer fan. This isn't me or Mike Gill talking. This is a guy who's covered the league for over the course of basically 2 decades almost at this point. And this is what he feels about Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons. And again, this is an objective observer. This is someone who, is involved in covering the league on a national level.
Kudos to the Sixers organization for, even though they've made some major shakeups over the last 5 years, changing over the front office a couple times, changing over the coaching staff, to recognize that let's give these guys patience and see if they can figure it out together. The last team that had the guy who finished second in MVP and second in Defense Player of the Year was the Los Angeles Lakers, who won the championship last year. And that's a special type of combination to have.
And listen, there's no guarantee the Sixers are going to win a championship. It's the point that Dave made to say, listen, there's value in this combination. It's not all doom and gloom. It's not all Ben Simmons can't shoot. And you know what? Yes, in the grand scheme of things, if you believe that Ben Simmons doesn't live up to expectations as a number 1 overall pick, that's your right to believe that. But, something that Mike Gill and I have talked about in the past, you look at number 1 overall picks. Not many of them have the impact that we think they do. At the end of the day, outside of LeBron James, the list is very, very thin in the last 20 years of who are the real impact number 1 overall picks. Because Kenyon Martin, good player, not great. Kwame Brown, bust. Yao Ming, great player, injured a lot. LeBron James, transcendent talent. Dwight Howard led the Magic to the finals, then got injured a bunch of times. Bogut Bargnani, busts. Odin, injury plague. Derrick Rose, league MVP. Blake Griffin, fun player to watch, not a superstar. John Wall, very good all-star, doesn't make a team a championship contender. Kyrie Irving, never won anything without LeBron James. Anthony Davis, couldn't do anything with the Pelicans, had to go to LA to win something. Anthony Bennett, bust. Andrew Wiggins, average player. Karl Anthony Towns, very good player, doesn't change the team. And then you get Ben Simmons. It's not like every player on that list is making a difference. Ben Simmons scored 4 points the other night, but he accounted for 21 points with his assists and his points scored. So at the end of the day, Ben Simmons accounted for almost 18% of the team's points in game 2, but he himself only scored 4. So, if people around the NBA look at Simmons and Embiid and think they're special players, I think it's about time that we accept who these guys are. And that's just how I look at it. All right, I see some of your comments. I see Kyle has jumped in on the chat as well, so we'll get to some of these in the order they came in. Also, shout out to Jeff Bone and Pookie. I really appreciate it. I know you said this a couple times on the stream as well with the Sports Bash with Mike Gill as well as here. Listen, I appreciate the compliments I get at the gym. I'm glad if I can help anybody, better their lives, get a little bit better health and shape. Going to the gym is therapeutic for me. I have a bunch of chronic health issues. So, going to the gym is my way of managing those health issues that I deal with. So, but Jeff, I appreciate that. I do see you leaving the comments, and I do recognize it. So thank you. I do appreciate that. Some more comments coming in on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter. We also have a text board open at 609-403-0973 to get on the conversation. Rodney chimes in with a very interesting comment because as the Bucks play the Nets tonight, Rodney says, I'm not convinced the Bucks are just going to roll over so easy. The Nets are the obvious favorite at this point, but the Bucks also didn't look like themselves at all in the first two games. Couple of reasons why. Number one, I think that Mike Budenholzer is holding this team back. I'm getting the feeling more and more that Budenholzer is the Giannis, what Doug Collins was to Jordan, what Mark Jackson was to Steph Curry, what Del Harris was to Shaq and Kobe. I just think he's the guy who can only get you so far. Right now on FanDuel Sportsbook, again, sign up with promo code Hennig to get in on the same game parlays insurance. You bet on a same game parlay, all NBA playoffs long, you get up to $10 back on your bet. That's promo code Hennig with FanDuel Sportsbook. Gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER. Right now, the Bucks are a -3.5 favorite. And they're telling you something. Remember, I always tell you guys about finding value and understanding the lines. It's not just a -3.5 favorite. The odds are -108. So for context, if you bet $108, you will get $100 back. So the odds are almost even in terms of what the odds makers are saying. Listen, we're giving them 3.5 points, but what we're saying is this is as close to a coin flip game that you're going to get. So I understand that the Nets are the favorites to win the series, but they may not be the favorites to win the game tonight. I think that people are going to see a better Bucks team tonight because they're at home. Role players always play better at home. And let's be realistic. The Nets, the one game they lost in the Celtics series was in Boston. It wasn't a road game. It was in Boston. So take that for what it will. I think Giannis, he's going to play hard. But the rest of that team, will they step up? Drew Holiday has basically been invisible most of this series. Chris Middleton has been streaky. I wouldn't be surprised if the Bucks win tonight. Again, you hear all the action right here on 97.3 ESPN FM. 609-403-0973 is text board. We also got a comment on the YouTube stream. Kyle Dubray says Ben Simmons is the best defender in the league. Listen, I'll come out and say it. I think that Ben Simmons should have been Defensive Player of the Year. I think he was robbed. I think that the league is too obsessed with block shots. I think the block shot stat has ruined our ability to evaluate defensive players. I think because the block shot is not as common as it used to be, that we look at the block shot and value that more than other things. And that's a shame. Anybody who watches Rudy Gobert realizes that all he is an elite shot blocker who does some really impressive things defensively. But Ben Simmons can guard anyone and everyone up and down the court. And for him not to get Defensive Player of the Year, I think is ridiculous. And you know what? Ben Simmons may never get the Defensive Player of the Year because I think there's a bias against the Sixers in terms of some of these voters. I think there are some voters who will never vote for Embiid because they hold the injuries against him. Some people will never vote for Simmons and give him credit because he is a guy that is not going to fit the traditional mold. He may never fit the traditional mold. It doesn't matter who the coach is. If Brett Brown, who is good friends with his father, and Doc Rivers, who is one of the most respected coaches in the league, can't get Ben Simmons to change his game at all, then you know what? It is what it is. He is what he is. And you know what? Honestly, the Utah Jazz, Rudy Gobert is probably the second best player of that team. And Gobert don't have no offense either. Gobert is just a dunk machine. People act like Ben Simmons is, his offensive game is limited. You ever watch Gobert play? Gobert is pathetic as an offensive player. He is awkward as anything on the offensive end. At least Ben Simmons gets you assists. Kyle's right. Ben does the dirty work as well. All right. Thanks, everybody, for chiming in on the YouTube channel. Thanks to Dave McMenamin for joining the show. Great conversation with him. That'll be up on our YouTube channel a little bit later if you missed any of it. I'm Josh Hennig here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN. Thanks, everybody, for chiming in. Sports Bash Mike Gill, loaded show tomorrow, 2 o'clock. I'll be back at Game Night at 6 p.m. right here. Catch you then, 97.3 ESPN.
Health Update with Robin Stoloff. Learn more, live better.
Lack of sleep doesn't just make us tired, it could also be making us gain weight. When we don't get enough sleep, we move less and our metabolism slows down. A slower metabolism reduces the number of calories our bodies use. Being tired can also increase our appetite and affect our food choices. Studies show sleep-deprived people tend to go for salty snacks and sweets high in carbs. If you're tired, you're more apt to grab a donut or chips for a short-term energy boost. Finally, a lack of sleep also affects when we get hungry. Our bodies are designed to eat more in the morning and less after dark. But when we're sleep deprived, we tend to skip breakfast or eat a skimpy breakfast and binge on after dinner snacks. Getting a good night's sleep won't magically give us a beach body, but it will help us maintain a healthy weight. I'm Robin Stoloff for Health Update.
Health Update with Robin Stoloff, empowering you to live a healthier life.